Hey guys, today I will be going over the strategy that I used in my heroic Rasha'Nan solo kill. The strategy I used was pretty similar to my normal Rasha'Nan solo kill with a few key differences due to the increased difficulty. Your guys' support for these videos has been absolutely incredible, so I just wanted to say thank you so much. You guys inspire me to keep doing what I'm doing, so if you like what you see and you want to see more, consider subscribing. The fight in total was about an hour, and it took me about 50 attempts to complete. If you want to watch the full kill, I'll leave a link to that video in my description, and it'll be up on my page. It'll go up right after this video. For this fight, I had a little over 20,000 verse with the Flask and Rune, as well as the 5% damage and healing buff from this being the 4th or 5th week of raid. The talent build I used was very damage reduction oriented, with talents such as Rune Tap and Blood Drinker in order to limit how much damage I was taking throughout the fight, as well as to specifically deal with the Tank Buster, which deals 60% of all non-mitigated damage as a physical and nature dot. As a Blood Death Knight, we don't have access to the strongest damage reduction tools, so I used Refracting Aggression Model and Swarmlord's Authority as my trinket to provide a 50% DR up to an absorb cap that scales with Vampiric Blood. Now, getting into the heroic changes, on top of things hurting a lot more, there are also a few new key mechanics that we have to deal with. The most important and notable of which being Web Reeve, which is a giant soak mechanic that splits all the damage between your group and does a pull in that is reduced by how many players soak. Initially, I thought I could just sit in this mechanic with Death's Advance, since it gives immunity to forced movement effects, but I think the devs thought of that when they were coding this fight to prevent Death Knights from just soloing this mechanic, so it doesn't really work that well.
Yoink!
What?
Defensive.
In order to survive this mechanic, I ran to the other side of the platform away from Rasha'Nan so that when he pulled me in, I would end up right at his feet. It was important that I spaced this out pretty much perfectly every time, because if I get pulled a little bit too close, then I would fling off the edge, and if I was a little bit too far away, I would die to his follow-up Tank Buster, and since I'm a Death Knight, I can't heal from a range. I need to be right on top of him to Death Strike and get my health back. Since there's no one else to soak with me as well, this ability does a ton of damage, so not only do I need to Death Strike pretty much right after I get hit by it, I also need to use a defensive for this ability while still having defensives up for the Tank Buster, so I wasn't taking the full unmitigated hit. Because of the added movement in this fight, I also opted to take Wraith Walk instead of Soul Reaper for this kill, especially since Spinret Strand seems to have a more aggressive pull-in, and I wanted to use Death's Advance to get out of that as quickly as possible to limit how much damage I was taking. Rasha'Nan's Enrage causes him to use his abilities more often and have them last longer, so his Erosive Spray cast lasts 30 seconds instead of 4 seconds, and he uses his Tank Buster 4 times in a row at certain points during the fight, making it a pretty simple but very deadly Enrage. Since the dot from Erosive Spray does around 70,000 damage and it stacks up to over 30 times during this cast, we would be taking 2 million damage per second on top of all the other abilities going on throughout the fight, which wouldn't be survivable if it wasn't for Anti-Magic Shell preventing some of the applications. Important to note here is that in order to prevent applications of this dot for the full 7-second duration of AMS, the Absorb Shield itself has to survive all of the damage, so I often paired it with a defensive or with Vampiric Blood to make sure that the shield was big enough to survive the full duration. After going through about 4 phases of his Enrage sequence, Rasha'Nan flies to the center and just stops using all mechanics. I have no idea why this happens, but it makes finishing out the fight pretty easy. If you have any questions about this fight, leave a comment, and that's pretty much it.